Hey guys, welcome to part A of part 2 of my 105 equipment guide, the build showcase. In this series I wanted to take a deeper dive into the more commonly used setups, explain how they work, and point out some recommended epics you can use alongside the core pieces. And in doing so, I hope to push those of you who are a bit overwhelmed or lost in the right direction so you can take a confident step forward in obtaining an effective setup. Today I want to begin with probably the most popular setup of them all, Mana Burn. This setup mainly revolves around the Genius Engineer's Boots, which provide skill attack based on 5% of your total MP cost increase, of which it provides 100% to start. And to increase it further, you use Genius Engineer's Belt for another 100%, as well as Ender's Gaze for another 175%. These three pieces alone provide a total of 375% MP cost increase, which means the shoes will then provide 18.75% skill attack in total. On top of all that, each piece also provides an insane amount of damage value, further increasing your damage output as you level them higher and higher. Despite this setup nearly quadrupling your MP costs, most if not all of your MP issues should be solved by the 3500 MP on attack option on the belt. However, if you're still having trouble maintaining your MP, I'd like to present my first recommendation, the reversible leather coat. Although this piece doesn't offer any damage increases on its own, it does provide another 50% MP cost increase, raising the total skill attack from the shoes to 21.25%. This is effectively a 2.11% damage increase, which is alright. But more importantly, it provides another 3500 MP on attack option, which should absolutely solve any MP issues you may have with the setup. Also, as a bonus, the first option's Hero Spirit buff is actually kinda cool. If your HP hits 0, it'll start draining your MP by 2% each second, as well as consume MP upon receiving damage, but you'll remain alive until your MP hits 0. Potentially useful for finishing a boss off, or at least sneaking some more damage in before you inevitably go down. Although, in theory, you could stay alive for as long as you'd like if you drown yourself in mana aids and milk. Hey, if that's what it takes to take the boss down, more power to you. Now, if you don't have any issues maintaining a healthy amount of MP, you can instead consider using things like Shadow Black Suit or Genius Engineer's Top for up to 20% cooldown recovery, as well as some HP recovery on hit. Or if you're running a burn setup, you can use an Armored Power Top for 15% burn damage instead. All solid options, use whatever works for you. As for bottoms, you have a few options. First, you can use one of 4 pieces that provides a hefty amount of elemental damage, one for each type. The first options provide 1 point of elemental damage for each point of resistance for the corresponding element. But the catch is that they reduce head resistance by 20, and you have to get hit by that element to negate the effect and get another 20 elemental damage for 10 seconds. This sounds pretty asinine by itself, but this will pair very well with an assortment of necklaces that I'll get to later. If you're hurting for some cooldown reduction, Unlimited Cybernetics is a decent choice, though at the cost of losing HP while dashing. You could also consider Jade Ghost Tacets, which offers 8% cooldown reduction, alongside a sizable amount of damage value and permanent super armor. Although it requires a staggering 120 avatars in your avatar inventory. If that doesn't sound like too much trouble, it's a fantastic choice though. And lastly, we have my personal recommendation, the Storm Rider Pants. And although it doesn't do literally anything in the ways of increasing damage, it does heal HP based on 10% of MP spent on skill casts. And if you're spending 4 to 6 times your original MP costs, it's going to top you off fairly quick as long as you have skills to cast. If you happen to get one while farming for the core pieces, I suggest you try it out and see how you like it, though do be warned, it may be hard to give it up once you do. And next we can move on to accessories, starting with the bracelets. Naturally, the status bracelets are a no-brainer, as they're just inherently powerful even by themselves. Bleed is the most popular for outright damage output, but Shock is also quite effective for classes with naturally high amounts of multi-hits, and is also effective at neutralizing machine-type bosses, which are very common. For example, you can neutralize 4 out of the 5 bosses in Castle of the Dead with Shock, with Kalbari being the odd one out. If you're not very keen on converting half of your damage into a status, however, there are alternatives. For example, the Replacer, which provides another 200% MP cost increase, immediately maxing out the skill attack option of the Engineer Boots. That's a 5.26% damage increase by itself. Not bad. But on top of that, it also provides 3% cooldown recovery for every 8% remaining MP, meaning at 80% MP, you'll get 30% cooldown recovery. While this sounds kind of annoying on paper, in practice it's not quite so bad, as you could just pop an MP recovery item while your skills are on cooldown and have them come back sooner. At least in theory. That said, with this much MP cost increase, you're probably going to want some more MP recovery, so the ultimate generator top is my recommendation, as there isn't any point in using reversible leather coat for more MP cost increase. And lastly, we have the Bound Freedom Bracelet, which increases the damage of clear cube skills by 10%, as well as providing up to 30 elemental damage, but at the hefty cost of doubling the clear cube costs of your skills each time you cast them, up to 3 times. That'll get rather costly in longer drawn-out fights, but the damage increase is certainly very high. Moving on, I would like to first introduce to you one of the most commonly used necklaces in the game, the Heightened Fury. This grants a 30-second buff upon reaching a 20-hit combo that lets you ignore 8% of an enemy's defense. In my tests, this translated to roughly an 8.4% damage increase alone. On top of that, the necklace also provides 15 elemental damage and sports one of the highest base damage values among necklaces. There is a very good reason why it's as popular as it is. The only issue is that reaching a 20-hit combo for some classes can be quite difficult, which is where the 4 elemental necklaces come in. These synergize with the 4 aforementioned elemental bottom epics by way of providing a proc that damages both you and surrounding enemies with a corresponding element. And voila, a reliable way of activating the elemental damage and resistance options on each of the bottoms. On top of that, the necklaces also further increase your elemental damage by another 30, so the pair will offer you a grand total of 95 elemental damage. However, do note that these necklaces have a relatively low base damage value, so it's not as crazy as it may seem, but for some unconditional damage, they're still amazing. And lastly, because I will never recommend Locked Area due to its exorbitant requirement of having 400 million gold at all times, I present to you the last recommendation, the Knight's Repentance, which doesn't look appealing in the slightest yet, but in a future update, its effect will provide 5% skill attack for 40 seconds if you dash for at least 1 but less than 3 seconds, or 10% skill attack if you dash for 3 seconds or more. It can be a little annoying to maintain the buff as you have to dash for an unnaturally long time, but the damage increase is well worth it, so give it a chance when we get the update. And on to rings. We'll begin by introducing the highly coveted Adaptable Two-Tone Ring. If you're looking for utility, look no further. Providing up to 24% attack speed, 36% casting speed, 28% movement speed, and 30% cooldown recovery, this thing does it all. You do need 90% movement speed to get the full 30% cooldown recovery, but it's not too hard to achieve with enchants and emblems, or of course a buffer in your party. However, if you don't need any of those things, you can instead opt for things like the Red Life Ring if you're using the Burn Bracelet, or Glowing Life if you're using the Shock Bracelet for some raw damage instead. And on the special equipment, starting with sub-equips, the Tactical Prop Drone is probably the most recommended one for now, as it only requires you to pick up a box dropped by a drone every 20 seconds. It is kind of annoying and can break your rhythm in some classes, but it's a solid damage increase. Also, the 30% HP and MP box that gets dropped upon getting hit is also quite nice. If you're using the Burn Bracelet, however, the Virtual Sight glasses are highly recommended, as it'll increase your skill attack on burned enemies. The glasses can also inflict burn by itself, but the uptime is not great. And lastly, the Deca Guidance Device is very niche, but can be incredibly strong. If your class can neutralize bosses very quickly through super holds, statuses, or both, this could be a very fun pick. It'll grant you 50% cooldown recovery and 10% skill attack on neutralized enemies. Naturally, if you can't neutralize a boss without unloading your entire kit, it's probably not worth considering this one, but otherwise, this can be incredibly strong. Also, if you've been paying attention to what the Koreans are up to, you may have noticed that almost everyone is using the optical combat glasses. These can be obtained from Meister's Lab, so it'll take some work, but they become the gold standard as they provide 5% skill attack if your total equipment quality percentages are over 1080%, which is about 90% average, and a large amount of damage value, assuming the glasses are over 90% as well. Not too unreasonable, though potentially expensive, as Kaleido boxes are already not so cheap and are probably going to be more expensive once we get Meister's Lab. As for magic stones, there's a handful of good ones. Firstly, we have the mini battery pack, which offers a significant amount of damage value as well as up to 100% MP cost increase. Assuming you're only using the 3 core pieces, this boosts your MP cost increase to 475%, granting 23.75% skill attack from the shoes. This translates to a 4.21% damage increase. That's not bad. Furthermore, if your MP falls to 20% or below, you gain even more damage value, making this a strong contender. With this much MP cost increase, however, you're probably going to want a reversible leather coat, which will of course give you 525% MP cost increase in total, and therefore qualify you for the maximum 25% skill attack for the shoes. If you're playing a very melee class, the tactical wheel drone is very strong, as it provides up to 10% skill attack when an enemy is within 150 pixels of character, as well as 10% speeds. Classes like Monk, Female Brawler, and both male and female grapplers are very great candidates for this item. Some classes can also use a Great Catstone to great effect, which increases the damage and cooldown recovery of 15 to 35 skills upon basic attacking. Classes like Battle Mage, Skirmisher, Ghostblade, Swordmaster, Dragoon, and Necromancer are great candidates for this item as well. And of course we have the Restraint Spirit Bead, offering yet again a significant amount of damage value, but also 8% cooldown reduction and a fair amount of speed. It does require up to 20 hatched creatures in your creature inventory, but it's a very popular stone for raw utility. Last but not least, we can finish it off with earrings, which are almost solely going to depend on your class. The Corrupt Soul earrings are definitely the safest choice, as they just simply increase the damage of Clear Cube skills by 8%. It's a bit underwhelming, but it's pretty decent for now. However, in a future update, they will also reduce the cooldown of Clear Cube skills by 10%, making them even more effective. The Surging Hazy Lament earrings may seem a bit punishing for a lot of classes. They increase the damage of skills with cooldowns longer than 15 seconds by 10%, but decreases ones with cooldowns that are shorter by 15%. They also decrease your cooldowns if your attack and casting speeds total less than 100%, but increase them if they're over 100%. They don't sound too appealing right now. However, these earrings will see some huge changes later, increasing the damage of skills with cooldowns longer than 12 seconds by 15%, and reducing the cooldown penalty to 5%. Definitely worth considering after the changes. The Acrobatic Rhombus earrings, on the other hand, are very specialized. Right off the bat, they reduce the damage of your awakenings by 25%, but increase the damage of your advanced skills by 20%. They also reduce the cooldown of skills that don't consume clear cubes by 30%, but increase the cooldown of clear cube skills by 15%. These are incredibly powerful for classes and builds that specialize in sustained damage with lower leveled skills, though at the cost of burst damage. Some examples are Battle Mage, Ghostblade, Asura, Soulbender, and Short Sword Swordmaster. Also, even though the 15% cooldown penalty may seem a little harsh, you also have to remember that you're probably going to have a lot of cooldown recovery, and that's going to offset quite a bit of that. And of course, if none of these earrings appeal to you, then you could also go for the Cursed Bridle earrings with a Bleed Bracelet for some raw skill attack on bleeding enemies, as well as 10% cooldown recovery for each bleeding enemy within 450 pixels of your character. Honestly, not a bad choice. And that's it! To review, the Mana Burn setup is both extremely powerful and quite flexible, leaving more than enough room for a little personalization. There are quite a few other epics you could use with the core pieces, but these are just the notable ones I recommend. Feel free to experiment though, and hopefully we'll see some rebalances going forward that'll shake things up a bit, maybe open some new doors for the build. We'll see. Thanks for watching, and I hope this will help you get started on some build ideas for your characters. And also tune in next time where I'll be going over the Archon setup as soon as I finish a character with one. But otherwise, happy grinding folks, and cheers!